Welcome to the Excel guide. In this video we'll show you how to create and use and navigate around pivot tables and also how to change the data range of a pivot. So a lot of people ask, what is a pivot table? Well, basically it's a way to summarize the data in your table. For instance, if we've got this table here with a whole bunch of information about actors and how much box office grossing they were, a couple of fields, it's not very easy to see. For instance, what if we were interested in just the UK box office gross of all movies? I mean, you'd have to go through and filter and for UK and just sum all the UK entries. Now, a pivot table enables us to summarize all this data really quickly, and the result will look like this. For instance, if we were just wanting to look at UK box office gross, or within the UK we were interested in who were Oscar winners and who weren't Oscar winners, or just if we were interested in totals without the actors. It's a very quick and snappy way to summarize all your data. So now let's go through how to create a pivot table. So go to your data range and select the range that you want. Now, just a warning, pivot tables cannot have blank headers for fields. So we couldn't, for instance, use this as our range because it needs to see each one of the headings for each one of the data to be able to group it and be able to slice it and sum it all. So we'd be best off using this, just making sure that everything has a heading and using this set of data. Now, a tip on how to select your data is to use this shortcut. The Shift Control and down and the right Shift Control right will help you select the edges of your data really quickly. So I'll just show you that in action. So Shift Control right will take me all the way to the edge of my data here, and then Shift Control down takes me right to the end, the last entry, or the next non-blank row. So once I have my data range selected, which if I had all the headings set up properly, I could have just selected up across the top here, but I didn't. Go to Insert and click on Pivot Table, and it will give you that range that you just selected. Or if you want to change it, you can just go and rejig that range that you wanted. And then determine if you want the pivot table to appear in this worksheet itself, or usually we'll just throw into a new one. So it has sorted all your data with all the fields, and this is your pivot table, blank pivot table, ready for you to build all the fields that you want in there. So to select the fields that I want, for instance, I'm interested in the actor, and it will immediately appear, and whether or not they were Oscar winner, and probably what country they were from. And as for the data that I wanted to sum or calculate on, I want to know what the average box office grossing is. We'll select that, and because they're a numerical field, it'll automatically put it in the sum total values field here. Now you'll notice that here, it's not the nicest format, hard to read these big numbers. What we can do is change the field settings here. So just click on this drop down here, click the value settings, and here you can pick the number. It will always default to general, and so you can click number, use 1000 separator, and I don't want any decimal places, and this is a preview of what the numbers look like. Okay, and now it's a lot easier to read. Now here perhaps I want some totals as well. Maybe I just want to organize it in a different manner because it seems to be repeating a lot of numbers. We can go to two ways to do this. The first way is pivot table options, and I can choose the display to be a classic pivot table or a grid where I can drag and drop fields. And this is the old 2003 Excel classic pivot table. The new 2007 one was the one that we saw. So let me undo that. So options, pivot table options, display. I don't want the classic anymore. You can also go to the design view here and change the report layout to be tabular format or compact form, which is the default, or outline form, which looks like this. But personally, I prefer the old classic view. So I'll go back into the options here and switch on the classic pivot table because that will enable me to drop fields in here. So for instance, if I don't want actors in, I might want it later, I can just drag it up there, and I can also move these fields left and right here. Whereas with the new 2007 version, it requires you to move it around here. So it forces you to use the field list a little bit more. Now you'll notice we've got some totals here. If we don't want the totals to appear, we go to the field, right click, field settings, and it's automatically subtotaling. If you don't want the totals to appear, just deselect it so there's no subtotaling and it'll go away. Let's put actors back in, drag it back in. Also, you could have just dragged it on this side. And once you've put another field in, totals come back. The default is that there will be totals, so it's okay if we can leave country totals in there. Let's move country to the start. So now we're looking at by country, whether or not they're an Oscar winner, and the actor, and how much box office gross they had. If you want to bring in some more fields to calculate, say number of movies that they've made, and that'll give you the sum there. And if you want to also do, say for instance, change the calculation within here for it to be, let's see, what is the percentage of total Australia does Hugh Jackman box office gross for us, without having to do the calculation yourself. What you can do is go to that field, sum of average box office gross, go to the field settings, and there's another tab behind here which says show values as. So right now it's normal, which means it'll just show you what your base data was, but you can also choose all these different ones, percentage of the difference, percentage of the column. So we'll do percentage of the total. Well, what it's actually done there is percentage of the full total of all. So we wanted only Australia, so let's filter for only Australia. Oh, sorry, yeah. And then we'll do a percentage of the total there. So Hugh Jackman has about 20% of the Australian box office gross. Sam Worthington's doing quite well. Now, so let's deselect that. And if we wanted to change it back to just numbers, again, value field settings, and show values as, let's go back to number. And of course, the normal has defaulted, so it's bad number formatting. So this is a bit annoying, but we have to change this all the time. And go back to with the commas. Now you can also do some color coding. So let's put in blue for the turtles here to make it stand out a little bit. And what that will do is actually stick around. So if we move the country around, it will move with it, which is something that the old Excel was not so good at, but the new 2007 one is great at. Then I've already showed you can just filter certain people out. You can also sort. So let's sort them from Z to A, and it'll change that from A to Z. And if we stick up using certain fields that we don't care about Oscar and winner anymore, uncheck it and it goes away. So you can see there how it's quite easy to just navigate and click around and just massage the data you want the way you want to see it. Pivot tables are a great way to summarize large amounts of data. Now let me show you a shortcut on how to create a pivot table if you, for instance, forget that you need to go to Insert and Pivot Table. The shortcut is Alt-D and then P. So select your data range, which is already selected here, and then Alt-D and P, and it'll give you the old pivot table wizard, which will, again, the range of data. Because we've already got one, it's just asking me to use the same range that I selected for another pivot table. And I can finish it, and it pops up again. And again, you can just drop in whatever you feel like. But probably one of the most useful tools you'll use in Excel. If, for instance, you need to change the data range because you've added some more columns and need some more fields in there, let's learn how to change the data range of a pivot. So we'll go back to our pivot here. We'll add, the base data. We'll add a new field. Let's call it new. We'll add a couple of numbers in here. And say we wanted to increase the range of the data to include that. What you do is go to the pivot table. In the options field, there's a change data source button here. Click on that, and it highlights the current range of where the pivot table is looking at. And we want it to go over to N. So what you can do is reselect it, or if you're just a little bit lazy about it, you know you want to go there, one more over, just change it to N. And it will add that new one in there. So it's another field that we can select on. So because it wasn't in all ranges and not all numbers, it defaulted to putting it over here. But what I really wanted to do is sum. So we'll go over to this side where it's now counting your entries. But I want it to sum, so change it to sum, and it will sum your entries. So again, you can change the data source by going options, change data source, and you can use the field list. Now if, for instance, sometimes you've closed this field list because you want to see more of the screen and you've lost it, you can always go back up here and pick this, and the field list will come back. Also, if you've changed some data, and say for instance, I actually meant 2 million here, and 1 million here, the pivot table will not automatically update that. To refresh a pivot table, a couple of ways of doing it: options and refresh, or you can right click within the pivot table area and there's also the refresh option there. And then it'll bring in the new data that you've just refreshed where it's pulling from. So here, now we've got our 1 million entries. Well, that's it. Good luck with the pivot tables, and I hope you find it very useful. Thank you for watching the Excel Guide channel.